And the follow-up and being able to push through challenging dialogue is also significant. Because again, if you continue to remind yourself how much you love yourself and how much you care about yourself, and that when you are making these decisions, that there are informed decisions. And so if I'm comfortable enough to lay with you, I want to be comfortable enough to ask you these things as well. I think that when many of you, I think you mentioned as well as Daryl mentioned that if it's someone where you have sort of built up a relationship where you've known that person, hopefully you do have appropriate communication skills so that it probably is a little easier to talk to and to talk about this topic with someone that you've been connected with in that way. But then when we also think about intimacy in settings very similar to how we talked about the other round, of where this might not be someone that you're deeply committed to or that's deeply committed to you, this is just a physical relationship, those conversations become much more challenging, and which leads then back to your first point about using condoms, if nothing else.
Should we move on to the next one? Okay. So the next one is, when will you have sex with me? So assumptions. How do you handle that?
That phrase kind of bothers me. Why? Because why does it matter if we're in together and stuff? It'll happen eventually, but why are you rushing it? And I don't want you to ask the first time, okay, the second time, okay. But if you keep asking me over and over again, that should be a red flag that he's not, or she's not there for you. They just want to, yeah.
And that's all part of the negotiation process and what your limits are, and listening to each other. I'm not ready because, or how would you feel if we waited until? And once again, these open-ended questions that you can get their feelings too and see where they're coming from, and then you share your feelings. Feelings are very hard to share because we grow up K through 12 doing what? Behavioral and cognitive learning, right? All memorization and then doing things. Affective learning, feelings, oh my goodness, that's like brand new. And you're probably first exposed to it in higher ed in college. It's a whole different way of learning. And this is, feelings fall under affective learning. Different style. It's neat once you get used to it. You can learn so much about each other and about yourself. But it's scary and it hurts to open up sometimes. You were going to say something else.
Well, my friend's first line is, when I have sex, from the beginning. Before we started talking, we get serious, but listen now. There's no miscommunication later on down the road.
So you start off by setting a limit, that this is my limit right now, and that's how it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's one form of communication, is going with the limit first. Yeah. Anybody else? That was a good point, that's her style of communication when she first meets someone that could be a potential relationship. Anyone else have a style that they use? There's really no wrong style. These are just maybe, tips to help you for the future.
I think something else I think that falls in line with that assumption is that there is an assumption that you will have sex with someone, period.
Right.
Rather than, what if, kind of along those same lines, what if, no, I'm not, I'm waiting, or no, I'm not intending to have sex with you ever. So what, there could be those particular elements of where the way our society functions is that there is an assumption that this will happen at some point, rather than, because it's a matter of factly when, rather than even a discussion of if this is even going to occur.
And I like the idea of honesty. If it's never going to happen, that's okay to say, hey, geez, I'm just not going to go there with you. There's good in honesty as well. Sometimes that hurts too, but it's good. It's all good. Absolutely, because that hurts even more. Yeah.
And could potentially get us in some dangerous situations
Sure.
rather than being transparent and saying, no, that's not where I'm intending for this relationship to go. So again, take it or leave it. You can make your decision based on this rather than someone feeling like they were misled in a situation.
Should we move on to the next one? So the next one has to do with pressure. And it says, if you loved me, you would do it. How do you handle that? Regarding communication. If someone said to you, hey, if you loved me, you'd do it. Ah. She said, who said I loved you? Wait, and what would you do?
Oh, I was just going along with her saying, what's left of me?
And don't forget, you're responsible for you. So you're allowed to say no, okay? And follow through on what your limits are and be proud of, the decision that you made.
I also think like when it comes to like this line and with pressure, if it was me, I would like switch it around. Like if you love me, then you can pressure me about
Right. Or go with the open-ended question, why do you feel that it has to be like that for love? Or why do you feel that way? So that they can't just say a quick yes or no, they actually have to think about it. Oh, yeah, that is sort of silly. Always, open-ended questions are always good. You always get more feedback, you get more information. And that's good, right? Because you're information gatherers that you're in college. That's a good thing, right? What else? Stick to your decision, right? It's your choice, no one else's. Be caring and understanding so that you're not the person saying, if you love me, you do it. We're talking about if you're on the other end. What if you're the person making these statements and it might be something you want to think about? Hey, I made these statements, and don't get me wrong, we all hit bumps in the road or wrinkles in our life. I've hit many bumps in the road. I'm the first to say that I'm not perfect. But we learn from it, right? So if maybe you said some of these statements that we spoke about, maybe it's something you want to reevaluate. Oh, geez, I totally didn't like the way I phrased that. It came out wrong. I may have hurt someone's feelings. We miscommunicated. How could I say this in a better way that it makes sense? What's the most common form of communication in a sexual relationship? Touch, not verbal, okay? Verbal is probably the least common, and it's the one that we need to work on the most. Yeah. So, all right, let's look at your handout here. We have down, how about environment? We didn't discuss what kind of environment would be the best to have this type of discussion. You think during Chem Lab with 400 people around the table? when you're working with volatile substances? Let's talk about environment.
I feel like in a private setting with just you and the person, so first of all, your business won't be all everybody to hear it, and it's just between you guys. So.
Right, you're just focusing,
Right.
me and you, yeah. So a private setting, what else should be going on in your mind?
I think timing is important, because sometimes folks may not be ready to talk about certain, or you've just had a fight about it, and
Right.
you need to give it some time before you can talk about it in ways that might be productive.
I think timing is very important, and I think someone up here almost alluded to that when the person said, if you love me, you do it, and she was like, well, wait, who even said we got to that point yet? Yeah, so I think timing is really important, absolutely. So one-on-one, timing, maybe you want to make sure your head's clear of things, that you don't have other, that it's not, I know you're very busy people, right? Work, school, papers, when all, yes, when all that's in your head, it's hard to concentrate on one, and they're all important topics, but they each need individual attention. So once again, that's why timing is so important, that you can devote the time to have this important conversation. And how about maybe like a neutral environment that's sort of pressure-free? you know, not in the res hall on his bed. You know what I mean? Might not be the best neutral, pressure-free place. Can you think of anything else regarding environment? Think we covered that? Let's see what else we have on here. Oh, I put this down. This is something that healthcare providers do, but I thought in getting a sexual health history so that we could provide you with the best healthcare and medical treatment. But I thought it was important for you to know because I really think you can apply some of it to you. Yeah, I thought the 5 Ps were important. Let's go over those quick. Partners. And I think we spoke a little bit about how deep do you want to go into the history. That's your decision. We can't tell you how to go about communicating. We can just offer tips. So you may want to ask, hey, how many past partners did you have? And you know, depending on the number, then you may want to go further and say, when were you last tested? And were you tested since your last partner? Okay? So partners, I think, is important. What do you think?
I think partners is definitely important, but it's also one of those that, again, how you communicate something is very important because it is something that even if we attempt not to have judgment attached to it, that there is a feeling of judgment that people are oftentimes going to absorb or going to walk away with if you say, how many partners have you had? And something else that's important in understanding partners or that framework is that in many cases we are just as much at risk if someone had 1 or 2 partners versus if someone had multiple partners. We don't necessarily know what their one partner did versus someone's multiple partners. So it is an important dialogue to have, but maybe still within the framework of, well, were you and your last partner tested, or then were you tested after that partner, or something along those lines of where it's still pulling it back to why it's significant with this relationship.
That's good. And then the next one is practices. And the thing that I'll do as a healthcare professional is ask what type of sex you engage in. And the reason for that is so that I can go over different ways of protection, and it helps me in figuring out if we need to screen you for anything and what we need to screen you for and how we need to screen you. So by practices, I would ask, are you having anal sex? Are you having oral sex? Or are you having vaginal penetration? Or are you 2 females and you're in a sexual relationship that way? So there's many different definitions of sex. And I would want to find out what are your practices so that I could best treat you. But how do you think that can apply to them in talking about practices with their potential partner?
I think it again goes back to interpersonal communication, and one of those things of if you have a relationship where you have a history, and so perhaps you were friends or perhaps you dated for a while in advance, a lot of that stuff is likely to come up in conversation. You might work it into your conversation, and if you have crossed that stage of deciding that yes, you are going to be intimate with this person, but maybe it's just a matter of timing. So those conversations might come up more easily or more readily then. And so saying, well, I'm okay with this, are you interested in that? Maybe more along the lines of what you are willing to engage in. And then you can kind of determine what your partner has done or what you're willing to do. I think the way that obviously you phrase it in healthcare is extremely important and it's very necessary for people to be completely open with their healthcare provider about what they do, what they have engaged in. But then I also think that when we're looking at it in intimate interpersonal relationships, again, how we phrase that language is very important. Like you're not going to say it in the exact same way. We're not going to say it in the exact same way as we would. We don't have enough energy. You guys all have to stand up at once.
Okay.
There it goes. In the exact same way as we would, obviously, in a healthcare setting, but it is still extremely significant that we somehow work this in there. And you eventually pick up certain things that your partner does or doesn't do kind of along the way as well.